First question would be, how did you become a musician? It's just your, average question, and what's your story as an artist? And by artist, a horn player also, but if you have any other art in your life, then you can talk about that too.
Sure. Well, I grew up in a musical family. That always helps. My parents...
Or not.
Or not. Sometimes, yes. There's too much pressure to go with it. And my parents grew up in North Dakota, and all of my relatives immigrated from Norway. So I'm 100% Norwegian, but American born. And they brought music with them. And so my parents grew up on farms in North Dakota, and music was a pastime. In fact, music and storytelling were the two pastimes back then for them. So
what would it be, like singing or piano or?
Singing and guitar, and then piano too. So my mother had more piano background and keyboard background, and she was actually a church organist. So I got my start as a musician. Obviously, I learned piano at a young age, and then eventually joined the band and took up the horn, and my mom wanted me to do it. And so at first I'm like, whatever.
Particularly the French horn?
Particularly, she did.
Yeah?
She did. Mm-hmm. And I honestly, didn't really have a choice at that point. It was I was 12, and I didn't really think about what my choice would be, so I just went with it. And of course, I found it to be a difficult instrument, and that nobody else was playing it. So at first I was by myself, the only guy playing it. But I was very fortunate to go to a quality high school in Richardson, Texas, that had a lot of students, so we had a really good band program. So between going to school where I did in high school, and then having my mother growing up with my mother being a church organist, and her literally waking me up Sunday morning saying, "You're playing the offertory, the prelude, the postlude, the hymns. I'm not ready for service. You're going to bail me out." And so I, became pretty comfortable being a performer at a young age. So I think that had a lot to do with me thinking, well, I guess I could pursue this career. And after that, I just went on to college and, went to the conservatory, and what most musicians do, get degrees in it. And I think what I've observed is a lot of kids coming into this opportunity to be a musician, and somebody in the family essentially will shut them down and say it's not a financially smart decision. And so maybe my parents could have done that too, but they were very, open to what we wanted to do, and they always supported us. But at the same time, they didn't really come around and watch, and very many of the things that I did. And I think part of that is we grew up playing music together as a family so much. We knew each other not only as family members, but as musicians. And so I think my family kind of knew what I had in my package. And they're like, just see him in person and hang out with him. But to go see his music, I've seen it. I know what he's going to do. That's fine with me. So it's an interesting way to grow up. I think a lot of other musicians or families will come and see a lot of things that they do. And I don't regret it at all, because I like the way I grew up and the way my family treated me and supported me, even though it wasn't much of a, like, we're behind you all the way, but it was honestly, they were really in favor of it. So it was a good decision, I think. I've had a good career. It's been fun.
What's your HSO history? When did you join? And if you remember the very first show you played with the symphony, tell me about it.
That's a good question, because I was a substitute. So I've been in the Chattanooga Symphony since 1987. And, over the years, Huntsville called me up to play, and I substituted a lot of times. And at some point, I know I played principal horn on some big events before I was given the job, and to try to figure out which one came first. I don't know if I can do that, but there were some memorable ones before I became principal, like playing on Hildenleben and Mahler 3. first horn on those, and so I look back on those days fondly. Mahler 7, I think that was before you got here.
There are a lot of Mahler on this
Well,
list.
that was, I mean,
A lot of Mahler pieces. Well, it's for the French horn, right?
that's the ones we remember.
Yeah, or Strauss. Yeah.
Or Strauss, exactly.
But we did the Schumann four-horn.
That was
Concerto
fantastic.
too, yeah.
Yes, that was fantastic, and I appreciate the opportunity to play that so much. So thank you.
Thank God for composers who did not hate French horn players.
Yes, and we're doing some more Schumann at the end of this season too. So
Yeah.
same kind of writing too.
There
It's
you go.
fantastic for horns.
What do you do when you're not playing music? Or you just mentioned Chattanooga Symphony. What else do you do outside of HSO in the music business, in our beloved music business?
Okay, so I teach quite a bit, and I think that's one of the things that has helped me play better, because one of the things you do when you sit down with a student is, they have some mishaps or whatever, and you're eager to help them correct it. And then if I wanted to show them how to play it and I couldn't do it, then I had to go home and practice, and that would make me a better horn player.
And also you have to think about it, right? Like
Yeah, you have
being
to think,
able to explain it is...
You have to
Yeah.
explain it, and you have to figure out how to get the student to be able to do it. And so there's a lot of, self-awareness that comes into play after you do all of that. And I think overall it helps my playing. I would think it would help almost everybody's playing. So yeah, I teach adjunct at several universities, and I have some middle school students and high school students too. I just try to keep active. I like starting beginners so I can have, the whole gamut of horn playing, during, the week, so to speak, so I can kind of stay grounded. And then on top of that, though, outside of music, there's a lot of sort of farming background in me from my parents' upbringing. So specifically mechanics and fixing things. I've always had a knack for that and a love for it. So I like tinkering. I like driving junk cars and keeping them going. And it's one of my problems. I usually stack up too many cars, and then I have to find a way to just get rid of them, and then I start over again. It's one of those lifelong things.
I mean, but you always have to fix your horn, right? It's
There's
kind
a
of
lot
similar because you're working with a
very-
machine, right?
That's it.
Yes.
Well, and that's part of playing horn is understanding the physics of the instrument and being mechanically minded. That does help me figure things out a little easier and explain it to students too. So, in fact, sometimes I'll just tell them I'm putting on my mechanic hat to explain to you something so it'll help you play better. And so, that's just another, part of who I am.
The last question is a little philosophical, maybe, about the future of classical music, but strictly based on your own experience and your own career. Where are we going to be in 20 years, in 100 years? You think this is going to go away? Is this going to stick around?
Well, there's so many brilliant musicians out there. I don't think we're going anywhere. But I have seen a decline in the students' ability to read music, incoming students. And I happen to think that, somehow, the way that the world's going with our technology and stuff, we're not having students, take hold of music at such an early age like we used to. And then my other pet peeve is that I'm not a real spiritual person, but I did grow up playing music in a church. So I've been to church and played in church so much. It's my favorite place to play, other than the Symphony Hall like we're about to do this week. This is as good as it gets. But nowadays in churches, we see the words to the hymns, and we sing with the words, and you hear the melody and kind of go along with it. But what we've lost by doing that is people like me grew up singing out of the hymnal, and we had 4 parts to choose from. So if your voice didn't fit the line and you were smart enough, you could go to another part. And so I was a bass, and I just would always sing the bass line in the hymns. And I've been just trying to kind of put my finger on what's changing with the young kids and why it's getting more difficult. And, the pandemic had an effect on everybody too, because churches changed to, stay up with things, and people had to stay home. So more services are online, and so obviously you've got to have the hymns, posted differently in that manner, and then it carries over into the church. So there's a lot of factors, and nobody's to blame. But that's one of the things that I wonder is how we can include more music that people will read and try to just add it to their life, just to be able to do it. But it's an uphill battle because in music education in this country, it's challenging, and in the South, we're football heavy around here. But the benefit to that is that every football team needs a marching band, and every marching band has to sit down and have a class 5 days a week, and so they're all learning music. So that's how I grew up too. I was in the marching band and got to watch the football games, and so I appreciate that. I think that's helpful as well. I can't predict 100 years, but I think 20 years we'll still be flourishing as musicians. I do.
Great.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.